Let's just open up the press event here this morning. Welcome, everyone. This is the 2020 Northwest Ports Clean Air Strategy. Big announcement here from each of our ports here in the Pacific Northwest. A little housekeeping. We are recording this media event, and we will have this available afterward on our YouTube channel. You'll be hearing from commissioners from the Northwest Seaport Alliance. That would be Commission President of the Port of Seattle, Fred Felleman, Commission President of the Port of Tacoma, Dick Marzino, President and CEO Robin Sylvester of Port of Vancouver, Fraser. Then you're going to be hearing from some subject matter experts that will talk you through many of the details we've been working on for many years. And then after that, we're going to open this up to some questions. And in the meantime, as I mentioned, feel free to put your questions in the chat or just ask the questions when the floor is open. We'll do our best to answer those questions, and then any follow-up that you have, we're more than happy to make subject matter experts and commissioners available for that as well. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Port of Tacoma Commission President Dick Marzino.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Peter. I'm pleased to be here today to talk about the Northwest Ports Clean Air Strategy. This has been a partnership of our four ports coming together to protect our environment, workers, and our communities. This strategy builds on past practice and sets a bold new vision and direction for our ports to phase out emissions from seaport-related activities throughout the entire Puget Sound airshed by 2050. As we all know, ports play a key leadership role in the transition to zero emissions in supply chains. When this strategy was first adopted, it was the first of its kind in the port family. Over the last decade, we have successfully invested in and implemented emission reduction actions and seen regional declines in our air emissions. At the Port of Tacoma, we are developing a sustainable building policy for major remodels and new construction on port-owned buildings and moving our fleet to plug-in hybrid and electric vehicles by 2030. In 2010, Total Motion Trailer Express is a cargo vessels that go to Canada and back, Alaska and back, 100 calls in the Puget Sound. In 2010, they converted to electric power for their 100 ship calls annually to help reduce diesel and greenhouse gases by 90% while in port. To give you a little perspective of my history, I just recently retired after 50 years on the waterfront, and I can remember having to work at a place called the smelter, and having to walk through the smelter to get on the ship. You could taste the arsenic as you left. Well, that place now is called Point Ruston. It's a destination places. Communities live there. It's a place to play, live, and work. I can also recall, because the Port of Tacoma just recently purchased 8 new post-Panamax cranes, state-of-the-art. But I can recall the stack gas coming from vessels where I actually saw a crane driver go up there in a gas mask because of the emissions and also because of the air filtration system in the crane that wasn't able to take care of that. We've made a lot of progress in those years. Today, we are working on installing shore power on Husky Terminal in Tacoma and on T5 in Seattle. The climate crisis is not going away. Reducing air pollution is not something we can do alone. It will take major investments, to strategic action, innovative technology, and all of us working together to reach our goal of zero emissions by 2050. And I know we can do it. With that, I'd like to turn this over now to my fellow co-chair, Fred Felleman.
Thank you very much, Dick. And it's been an excellent process going forward through this process, and having the Port of Vancouver with us is really a very great thing and makes part of the unique nature of this particular air strategy worthy of note. And I've been involved with following this process since the initial inventory back in 2005, and do environmental consulting on my other half of my existence. So I followed this very closely and been very impressed by the progress that we've made over time, both in due to the direct work that we've done, as well as things that have occurred around the world, like scrubbing the sulfur out of emissions coming from ships. And, ships still will contribute about 90% they carry 90% of the world's goods. So they're not going away anywhere, but they are somewhat the most challenging for us to make further progress on, because while they're underway, they're really subject primarily to international law. So it's really as the vessels come into the port area where our jurisdictions have the most influence, and really where their emissions have the most direct implications on communities, in our neighbors' health and benefits. So we've been very much committed to doing things, as Commissioner Marzino talked about, like shore power, so the vessels don't have to idle while they're at the dock, and as well as various other things that deal with businesses that either operate on the dock. The cargo handling equipment is some of the more has the least amount of emission reduction measures because they're not on the road. And then things like the drayage trucks, which call back and forth from the terminal. And we've made conditions on the leases that only trucks of 2007 or newer, where there was significant emission reduction goals or technologies installed. And we continue to make progress towards cleaner and cleaner assets. However, we also have to look at the reality that, in order to do good, we have to do well. And this has been, obviously a very challenging past year, but also as a Seaport Alliance, we still have Terminal 5 to come online, and we still have Terminal 46. We've been without a cruise season the past year and a half or so. And so we have to also scale our ambitions. It's easy to look to California and say, look what's possible. And we're very much impressed by the progress they've made, but they have certain advantages over us, like legislation, which we're still trying to get in place here. A low carbon fuel standard and price on carbon has enabled huge amounts of financial investments to be made back into air emissions. But it's not a luxury for California. Unlike California, we're not out of emission regulations. We're still in compliance. They have to do this. So they have a regulatory obligation as well. And they also have a very, significant commercial benefit in that they're the largest port complex in the country. They've generated huge amounts of revenue, and they don't have Canada as a border. And we'll hear from Canada, but we have a friendship as well as a very competitive relationship too to deal with. That's very different than what California has been able to do. Is great to see, but it is not necessarily possible for us at this time without huge financial investments. We are very encouraged that, hopeful that the state will implement its legislation, but very encouraged by what the federal government is proposing to do. And we're really hoping to create a green freight new deal that will enable us to meet these ambitious goals we have here as we move forward. At that, I'll leave it to our colleague from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Fred. No, it really is a pleasure to be here alongside you and Dick to reaffirm our commitment to this really important strategy. I'm Robin Sylvester. I'm the President and CEO of the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, the federal agency responsible for stewardship of the lands and waters that make up the Port of Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada. As Canada's largest port, we believe we have an important role to play in supporting the achievement of the Government of Canada's goal to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. The Northwest Port Clean Air Strategy is a key part of our efforts to advance the clean energy transition while protecting the competitiveness of our port and the economic prosperity it delivers to our communities. We really are encouraged by the many strides that have already been made towards reducing port-related air emissions over the last decade, through introduction of shore power facilities, as has already been mentioned, through cleaner fuel regulations for shipping, for example. And we believe these changes and future innovations offer promising opportunities to reduce air emissions while growing port capacity, creating jobs, and driving the commerce that supports the Canadian economy. At the Port of Vancouver, we've taken several important steps of our own to promote equipment efficiency, modernize infrastructure, and collaborate with industry to support clean technologies. Initiatives our Director of Environmental Programs, Carrie Brown, will speak to in more detail shortly. Well, these are important steps, though. We know there is much more to do. And a collaborative approach is fundamental to achieving the progress we're all striving for, particularly given that the majority of port-related air emissions are from activities outside our direct control. And that's why those of us here today must work together with government and industry to overcome the infrastructure and policy barriers to transitioning to cleaner energy use at ports. The achievement of this new strategy vision is a critical step towards increasing the long-term sustainability of our ports. And as the commissioners have both said already, I mean, we have a competitive relationship, but we share a common goal around improving the environment that we all want to see protected into the long term and improved into the long term. I'm really grateful for the strong forward-thinking collaboration that's been brought to this process by our US partners, and I really look forward to continuing to work with you to support this regional approach to reducing port emissions. With that, I'll pass it over to Carrie Brown, our Director of Environmental Programs, to provide an overview of the strategy and give a sense of how it will be implemented here at the Port of Vancouver. Carrie.
Thank you, Robin. Next slide, please. The new Northwest Ports Clean Air Strategy builds on over 10 years of collaboration to reduce port-related air emissions in the Georgia Basin Puget Sound airshed. The strategy was first launched in late 2007, early 2008, and was substantively updated in 2013. And we've published annual reports to document challenges and progress along the way. Over the years, the 4 ports have developed strong relationships and facilitated a number of notable successes, including actively supporting the introduction of the International Maritime Organization North American Emission Control Area Regulation, which significantly reduced air pollutants from shipping starting in 2015. Also, another success was the introduction of shore power facilities for cruise and container ships to eliminate emissions from auxiliary engines when a ship's at berth. And these successes contributed to collectively exceeding the reduction targets set in the previous strategy, which include reducing particulate matter emissions per ton of cargo by 75% by 2020 relative to 2005. In developing the new strategy, the 4 ports have taken the opportunity to put forward a bold vision to guide our long-term efforts. Our vision is to phase out emissions from seaport-related activities by 2050, supporting cleaner air for local communities and fulfilling our shared responsibility to help limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This new strategy supports global efforts to meet the Paris Agreement greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. And today, we're pleased to launch this new strategy. Next slide, please. It can be helpful to provide context for the strategy by reviewing the primary sources of port-related emissions. These diagrams provide an overview of the port-related sources of diesel particulate matter and greenhouse gas emissions and their relative contributions for the combined 4 ports. As you can see, maritime transportation, including ocean-going vessels and harbor vessels, comprise the majority of port emissions, nearly 60% of port-related GHG emissions. Rail, trucking, and cargo handling equipment continue to be important sources of emissions, especially when we consider that these activities occur near communities and can impact local air quality. The new strategy will look at each of these emission sources and consider the policies, technology, and energy infrastructure that will be needed to transition the sector towards zero emissions. It's also important to consider that port authorities have limited control and influence over these activities, and will need to work with government to inform the right policies that promote both clean technology and reinforce competitiveness. Next slide, please. In developing the new strategy, the ports identified pathways and objectives common to each of the activity sectors, and I'll now briefly describe these 3 themes. First, we feel it's important that ports, government, and industry continue to emphasize the importance of near-term reductions in air pollutants through continuous improvement. It's important that equipment become more efficient, and older, higher-emitting equipment needs to be phased out in favor of new equipment with advanced emission controls. We can also explore how to promote the use of renewable fuels that can be used in existing diesel engines to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the interim and as we work towards zero emission technologies. Secondly, adoption of zero emission technologies will require, among other things, that the right energy infrastructure is available in ports at the right time. This includes, for example, ensuring there's sufficient electrical distribution and hydrogen infrastructure within ports to enable broad adoption of zero-emission technologies. And third, availability of zero-emission technology for port applications is currently limited. And we see a great opportunity for ports to work with government and industry to accelerate testing, demonstration, and commercialization of safe and reliable zero-emission technologies. These are just 3 examples where the ports are working together to advance the strategy. Next slide, please. Given the scale and ambition of the new strategy and the challenges that lie ahead, it's clear that port authorities will be unable to do this alone. The new strategy presents a bold vision and is a call for action and collaboration between government, industry, and others to work together. We believe that together we can advance a strategy that supports cleaner air for local communities, fulfills our shared responsibility to help limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and positions our ports for long-term success. Now I'd like to shift to talk about what that means for each of the ports, starting with the Port of Vancouver. Each port authority is developing a plan for implementing the strategy in their port, and we'd each like to talk to you briefly about that. Next slide, please. Oh, thanks. As Robin mentioned, the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority is the federal agency responsible for the stewardship of the lands and waters that make up the Port of Vancouver. As Canada's largest, the Port of Vancouver handles $1 out of every $3 in Canada's international trade, or 145 million tons of cargo across 5 business sectors, including container, bulk, break bulk, autos, and passenger. In 2021, we will release an implementation plan for the Port of Vancouver that outlines our pathway to facilitating the transition to a zero-emission port. The plan will build on the lessons learned and success we've had and identify other ways where action is needed. For example, in 2019, nearly 40% of vessels calling the Port of Vancouver participated in our existing Eco-Action program for ships, obtaining a discount on harbor dues for being cleaner and quieter. We're working to expand the program to emphasize discounts for innovative technologies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions from shipping, such as using wind or battery assist or alternative fuels. We've had success with shore power at the Canada Place cruise terminal since 2009, and we introduced shore power at 2 container terminals in 2018. And we'll be working with government and industry to get shore power facilities installed at the remaining cruise and container berths by 2030. In 2015, we introduced the non-road diesel emission fee to promote the phase out of old, high-emitting diesel equipment. And we plan to continue this program to accelerate the transition and minimize emissions from diesel equipment. And finally, the implementation plan will include our partnership with the Government of British Columbia to facilitate testing and demonstration of clean technologies in port applications through our new Clean Technology Initiative. We look forward to working with the Northwest ports throughout these initiatives to share lessons learned, support each other, and together move our ports toward a cleaner future. Now I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Jason Jordan, Director of Environmental Programs at and he's going to speak to the strategy implementation for the Northwest Seaport Alliance and the Port of Tacoma. Jason.
Thank you, Carrie, very much, and thank you, Commissioners Fellerman, Marzino, and President Sylvester. The Northwest Seaport Alliance is the 4th largest cargo gateway in the U.S. We move more than 30 million tons of cargo annually, including containers, bulk, break bulk, military, and autos. In consultation with a wide range of industry, government, and community partners, we are developing an implementation plan that will lay out the Seaport Alliance's priorities, actions, and milestones for the next 5 years as we work towards the strategy's longer-term vision of zero emissions by 2050. Our implementation plan will be finalized this year. Example actions include, as Carrie mentioned, in Vancouver, shore power. It's an important solution for us as well, as it allows ships to turn off their diesel engines and plug into clean electricity while at dock. We have already installed shore power infrastructure at our Tacoma Maritime, Alaska terminal, as mentioned by Commissioner Marzino in Tacoma, and plan to complete the system at Terminal 5 in Seattle and Husky Terminal in Tacoma by the end of 2023. We are also in the process of designing shore power at Terminal 18 in Seattle, and that design will get underway this year. Our Clean Truck program, including the requirement initiated in January of 2019 that all drayage trucks serving our international terminals be model year 2007 or newer, has reduced diesel emissions from those trucks by more than 90%. Building on that success this year and into the future, we'll be expanding our scraps and replace incentive program, through which we give truck drivers serving our domestic terminals bonuses in exchange for scrapping their older 2007 trucks and purchasing newer, cleaner trucks. In addition, given the scale and complexity of this challenge of getting to zero emissions, heavy-duty trucking, we are working to create a statewide or regional clean truck collaborative to accelerate the commercialization of zero-emission trucks and the development of the necessary fueling and charging infrastructure. A really huge initiative. Similar, we are working to reduce emissions from our fleet of cargo handling equipment, the forklifts, the yard tractors, reach stackers, and other big machines that move cargo on and off the ships and around our terminals. In addition to requiring that all new equipment purchases have the cleanest available diesel engines, known as Tier 4, we are working with our industry partners to bring zero-emission technologies to our gateway as they emerge. For example, this year, we're working with Rail Management Services to bring 6 electric yard tractors to our South Intermodal Yard in Tacoma. We will continue to collaborate closely with our industry and government and community partners. For example, we look forward to continuing to work with our community-based organizations such as the Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition in Seattle and Citizens for a Healthy Bay in Tacoma to better understand and address port-related air quality concerns. Finally, we are strengthening our efforts to promote supportive policies at the international, federal, and state level, from the International Maritime Organization, Pacific Northwest Emission Control Area, to the clean fuel standards being discussed in the Washington State Legislature. Next slide, please. The Port of Tacoma, together with the Northwest Seaport Alliance, is the second largest job creator in Pierce County. We move about 5 million tons of grain cargo annually and manage an extensive real estate portfolio. The Port of Tacoma's implementation plan which is also under development and slated for completion this year, will focus primarily on buildings, facilities, and vehicles owned and managed by the Port and its tenants. Examples of those actions being planned are, this year, we are doing an interior and exterior lighting upgrade at our Fabulous Center, a port-owned office building that will reduce electricity usage by more than 70%. Going forward, we will launch a clean building initiative to identify and advance additional energy efficiency opportunities in port-owned buildings. We will also be developing a sustainable building policy to guide major remodels and new construction of port-owned buildings, including a new administration building that the port is planning within the next 5 years. And this year and next, we'll begin the transition of the port's administrative fleet to zero-emission vehicles by 2030. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Sandy Kilroy, the Director of Maritime Environment and Sustainability for the Port of Seattle.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jason. The Port of Seattle is proud to have been part of this collaboration that models the partnerships necessary to fight climate change and protect our communities from harmful emissions. Under this partnership, the Port of Seattle is pleased to say that its maritime greenhouse gas emissions have been reduced 20% from 2005 levels, but we have more work to do. And we are eager to join with our regional and industry partners to lead the equitable transition to cleaner maritime technologies and fuels in our region. At the Port of Seattle, air emissions come from cruise ships, grain ships, commercial fishing operations, and the port's own vehicles and buildings. Our implementation plan, called Charting the Course to Zero, identifies the steps we will need to take in the next 3, 5, and 10 years to transition our port to clean energy infrastructure, as well as advocate for national and international maritime policies. At the Port of Seattle, we are already the largest cruise port on the West Coast, and we aim to be the greenest cruise port. The Port of Seattle was the first home port in the world to have shore power at 2 berths. And now, as an early action of this planning effort, we will be installing shore power at our 3rd cruise terminal at Pier 66 by 2023. This will make all our cruise berths electric. It'll reduce the use of diesel fuels in the harbor and will almost entirely eliminate greenhouse gas and diesel particulate matter emissions from ships that plug in at the dock. To maximize shore power use, we also have a goal that by 2030, 100% of the home port cruise ships that come to Seattle have a shore power connection on board and plug in every time they're here. The cruise lines are already moving in this direction, and we are committed to continuing to work together to achieve 100% by 2030. The Port of Seattle also owns and manages over 400 maritime-related vehicles and has 80 buildings across our commercial, industrial, and recreational properties, including things like Fisherman's Terminal and the Shilshole Bay Marina. We are completing a sustainable fleet plan, as the other ports are, and transitioning our light-duty fleet vehicles to electric or renewable fuels by 2030. And we already provide renewable diesel at our marine maintenance facility. In our buildings, we are working to go beyond the clean air strategy and are committing to eliminating fossil natural gas from our buildings and to upgrading to LED lighting again by 2030. To drive the transformation of the maritime industry, the Port of Seattle is leading a strategic plan to bring clean energy to the Seattle Maritime waterfront. We are working with Seattle City Light, the Seaport Alliance, and industry to identify essentially a zero emission roadmap that will identify technologies, the fuels, the electrical infrastructure, policies, and the jobs that would be needed to fully transition Seattle's working waterfront to clean energy. And finally, on behalf of all the ports, our collective success depends on the regional, national, and international advocacy for new policies and technologies. A few other folks have mentioned this. We need supportive policies like a clean fuel standard in Washington, issues like significant funding for maritime-focused infrastructure, and strong ongoing engagement and partnership with the private sector, who are key to ensuring our success. The Clean Air Strategy is a continuation of over 10 years of collaborative partnerships. This 2020 update sets a much more ambitious 2050 vision that we are confident will drive significant change across our Northwest ports in the coming years. Thank you. And with that, I think I am turning it back to Peter McGraw for questions.
All right, great. Thanks, Sandy, and thanks for all of our speakers this morning. And so for our guests from the media, we open up the floor to any questions you may have. Feel free to either put them in writing in the chat or just feel free to raise your hand or jump in. We're here for you. Don't be shy. Oh, okay, we've got one. Yes?
Hi, can you hear me?
Mr. Ryan, yes, we can hear you from NPR.
KUOW, thank you. Let's see, there was a chart that showed the breakout of different sources of greenhouse gas emissions that said, what, 36% of ocean-going vessels, 36% came from ocean-going vessels. I'm wondering, I'm trying to understand what that means. Does that mean like if a ship's coming from China to Seattle, that you're counted up all the greenhouse gas emissions for the whole thing, and 36% of the total is from that trans-Pacific journey, or are you only looking at emissions kind of locally?
Great question. Alex, are you there?
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, so that's a great question, and that's getting to how the Northwest ports define their airshed. So really, this
And I'm
emission-
sorry, who's speaking right now?
This is Alex Adams. I work for Port of Seattle. So the emissions inventory really starts tracking emissions at the Straits of Juan de Fuca. So really, this 36% that you're referencing includes that transit when we're talking about a ship coming to Seattle. It really starts at the mouth of the Straits of Juan de Fuca as that ship travels down to Port of Seattle or Port of Tacoma.
And Alex, if you can just give us your title there for John's clarity there.
Sure, Senior Manager Environmental Programs, Port of Seattle.
If I could expand on that answer just for 1 second, John, it would be great if you could show the map. We had that graphic put up, but it's interesting, John. You asked. No other port complex has this extended transit. It's like 150 miles from the entrance to the strait to the Port of Tacoma. If you look at Long Beach, for example, it's a small dent in the coast where a very brief period of time would they need to account for the ocean-going vessel emissions. So it really dwarfs our exposure, accounting because of that long transit. And that's why I think while there was a significant reduction, and to the point that Port of Vancouver made, we actively lobbied for that ECA emission control area, which resulted in that huge accomplishment of the reduction of emissions from ocean-going vessels. But moving forward, I'm really committed, as focused on the port's contributions directly to look at those things near field, both the communities and those things that we have most control over. So it just to keep in context with other ports, that's why it's such a dominant feature.
Thanks. I guess my follow-up is that maybe from a general public point of view, I mean, how much of a dent in the global greenhouse gas impact of shipping will your effort make? I mean, and I understand a lot of things are beyond your control, but I'm just trying to understand, is most of the greenhouse gas impact of the activities that these ports support, is it mostly out there on these long transoceanic voyages that you just can't do anything about? And so these efforts, while having some local benefits, I'm wondering how much of a dent will they make in the global impact of the shipping activities that you all facilitate?
If I could just jump in one more time before my technical folks make sure that I get it right. One of the things that are not accounted for in this process, but is clearly the trend in the maritime industry, is to move to these larger ships. And we're investing, hundreds of millions of dollars to build these terminals, which are really resulting in, fewer larger ships moving more containers. So in fact, it's not by accommodating these larger vessels, we are actually enabling fewer transits to occur, which is a net benefit on that. And also these larger ships are the newest ships, so they have efficiencies and are designed to run at slower speeds. So slow steaming is a trend, which is also a fuel saving. That's the primary reason for that. So there are direct trends in the commercial basis why ships will be reducing in that. But unless there are active measures made, the trend towards emissions from vessels unmitigated could significantly increase. But this is one of the consequences of just the commercial trend.
I see Jason Jordan has his hand up there. Jason, did you want to make a point?
Well, actually, John, this is Jason Jordan with the Seaport Alliance Port of Tacoma. It's a good question, and Commissioner Fellman hit the nail on the head. Yes, we are focused on our airshed as depicted in this graphic here, but there are things that we can do that promote exactly what Commissioner Fellman was saying. So as we build out our facilities and we make them capable for big ships, so we can call it big ship ready, that means we're attracting those newer more efficient vessels to call our gateway. Not only are they more fuel efficient, they're quieter, they move more cargo, which has an overall emissions reduction perspective. And it ties directly in. There's a question that Matt from Cairo asked, which are, what examples of federal laws or international laws we're looking at that speaks to it. We recognize, hopefully, Peter, it's okay if I jump into that one as well. We recognize that, we have limited influence in our geographic area, but the emission control area, the ECA, as an example, was an international regulation that required vessels that could pre-ECA burn sulfur content fuel that had 3 to 5% sulfur content. Now they're at 0.1%. But that was done at the international level, and that has huge implications. And so when we look to the international or the federal level, we look at trying to do things like maybe there's an international standard where shore power is a requirement. We know that if shore power is a requirement in Asia, as an example, the industry will follow suit, and all the vessels or the majority of vessels in the service will be shore power capable. We look for the International Maritime Organization to look for opportunities to incentivize, innovate when it comes to the diesel engine powers on the vessels, on the steamship lines. Look for new technology, whether that's battery, whether that's sail, whether that's hydrogen as examples. But our hope is that working at the international level, we can influence, have some influence. And what that does from a competitive perspective as well is that levels the playing field so that all the ports have those same requirements. So hopefully that helps to answer some of your questions about from John and also from Matt.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jason. Anyone else? Any other questions?
I see Sandy has an answer perhaps, and I have one more thing I want to check in on, but let's have Sandy answer.
Yeah, I know. I just was going to add, I mean, the question is a good one because, the challenge of this industry is it's global and it's mobile. And so one port alone really won't make as much difference compared to moving all ports together. And I think that's what makes this collaboration unique, is that we're trying to lift all the ports to send a clear message to the market that the industry needs to move along with us. And the more we can do that with other ports across the nation as well as globally, we start driving the market for cleaner technologies and cleaner vessels. And then I would just this coming June, the International Maritime Organization, that, as Jason said, essentially sets the shipping standards, is having a meeting of their environmental group, and those are the kind of places where over time we hope to have more influence.
I see that Carrie Brown has her hand up here. Carrie, did you want to add a point?
Yes, thanks, Peter. Just, jumping in on both Jason and Sandy's comments, I think ports are really going to need to help facilitate the new energy infrastructure that ships need to help them transition to zero emissions. And our ports are going to have to work together to attract the most modern, the cleanest, quietest, greenest, and efficient ships that we would like to call the West Coast. Working together will be really important.
I'd like to build on that point. So it's the infrastructure that the ports are investing in. We have a waterfront electrification plan underway. So even if a ship is shore power capable, unless we have that infrastructure, that's directly going to help that investment. And again, because LA has to have these reductions, those ships are being designed to meet LA requirements. So that's a big thing. But I also serve on the board of Maritime Blue. I'm the port representative to that. And if you folks haven't gone to that website, it's really quite remarkable to incentivize innovation, to look at pilot projects that we can make significant demonstration projects that there are these new technologies out there. And the port is investing in this innovation center at Fisherman's Terminal, taking our oldest asset and making a green building out of, actually a living building, as a place to bring people together from around the region, around the world, to very much identify ways to decarbonize the maritime industry. That's maritimeblue.org.
All right, great. Thank you, Commissioner. Have we got any other questions from our guests in the media?
Yeah. Peter, there's a question in here from Ryan Harris in the chat. What kind of support are you getting from overseas shippers? Would you like me to tackle that one?
That would be great. Great.
Happy to do that. So it's a really good question. You know, the shipping community, the shipping industry is extremely competitive. It's a fascinating industry, but what I would say, the question specifically is what kind of support are we getting from overseas shippers? What I would say is what's really, in terms of might be motivating to focus on things like emission reductions or other environmental concerns. And what really drives that, Ryan, is the beneficial cargo owners. So folks like Home Depot, folks like Target, and we're seeing more and more sustainable practices being built in to their corporate structure. And they're looking for the steamship lines, the whole transportation system, the whole cargo infrastructure system to support their initiatives. So we're seeing more and more of that where they're asking, okay, what port are you going to call? What steamship line are you going to call? What's your carbon footprint? And so that's been really fun. And we're trying to piggyback and marry our sustainable practices program with those beneficial cargo owners, so that we can sync up and demonstrate that our commitment to a greener gateway and hopefully meet their corporate goals as well.
All right, great.
Can I follow up on that one as well? I just met with Amazon's intermodal executives, and they're looking at, you know, when you have Amazon and Microsoft with these globally ambitious goals, they need to be able to demonstrate that your box or whatever has come to you in a low carbon fashion. And to the degree which we can help enumerate those benefits, that's important to them as well. So, and it's really looking at the whole infrastructure of the intermodal from the time a vessel comes to the dock and moving it out of the dock. So Terminal 5, for example, has on-dock rail, which is a very efficient way to move cargo, especially if it's bound for Chicago, which is where much of our cargo is bound for. So that's really going to drive a lot of that innovation. And again, to be able to do that accounting, I think is very much a significant point to that move towards the greener gateway.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Have we got any further questions? I think we've got time for about maybe one more.
There are questions in the chat.
Well, let's see here.
Read? Okay.
Hold on one second. For some reason, I am not getting visibility to those questions. Does someone mind reading aloud what that is?
Looks like John Ryan asked, adopting 2050 climate targets have been likened to saying, I'll write a novel someday. Have the ports committed to specific numerical shorter term greenhouse gas emission targets? And are there any consequences of the ports not hitting their voluntary greenhouse gas targets? And then there's another one. Could you talk about the sense of urgency here? This is from Michael Crone. We see some climate scientists that say at large 2050 is too late to be net zero emissions. I know it's a big lift, but I guess I'd ask 2050 is soon enough. Those are the two questions left in the chat.
Maybe I'll take just a quick answer, and I'm sure everyone has a slightly different one. But to the first question on targets, and I think both of them get at that, we recognize 2050 is seemingly a long way off, but we do believe that will be important for essentially reaching the ultimate target in the end. Each of us are putting forward much more specific plans for the next 10 years. I know for the Port of Seattle, we have specific milestones, specific actions, and performance metrics that we will be using to track our change. And we do an annual emissions inventory for the Port of Seattle to give us the data to know how we're doing. And I think we're hoping that this creates the urgency. I mean, I think as we mentioned, a lot of this will be a global technology for zero emission ships and zero emission trucks. And we're just hoping that actions like this from our ports and hopefully other ports will push that technology development.
Great. Thank you, Sandy. Are there other folks that want to jump in on that answer as well?
Yeah, hi, it's Carrie Brown from the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority. And I, in respect to that adopting 2050 climate targets question, it's fair to say that coastal cities and ports are some of the most vulnerable to climate impacts, for example, to sea level rise. And so therefore, we have a huge stake in limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And each of us has set this ambitious goal through this strategy. And also this aligns with our own, in Canada, we align our goals with Canada's climate targets. And this also aligns with the International Maritime Organization climate targets. So these are ambitious goals. We have to start somewhere, we have to try. And we've all got a big stake in this. So we'll be doing our fair share and working very hard to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And we'll be working on an implementation strategy. As I know, Seattle and Tacoma and Northwest Seaports Alliance will be looking to develop their own implementation plans through the next year, and then and working hard to achieve those.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. Is there anyone else that wants to add to that?
This is Jason again, and I would just say, and Commissioner Fellman and Commissioner Marzino have said this previously, that 2050 is the floor, not the ceiling, and we'll be doing everything we possibly can to align up our resources, staff and financial resources to move as fast as we possibly can and hopefully beat the 2050 deadline that we've set for ourselves.
Okay, great.
Once again, I mean, we have received comment letters clearly demonstrating the community's frustration that we're not moving fast enough. But as we rely on the community to always want to push further. And like I said, it's not like it's impossible technologically for the port to do more. As LA and LB are demonstrating, there are clearly commercial and just straight up economic reasons why they have the advantage of doing that, as well as regulatory environment. We definitely are paying close attention and are doing what we can to achieve those goals. But what Sandy said is really where the punchline is. It's in the implementation plans where this comes to reality, what the individual ports are willing to invest in and seek grants for. And like I said, I look forward to having the community members who are frustrated by our timescale to join us in co-sponsoring these asks of the federal government and the state government so that we can accelerate these efforts. And at the same time, I'm looking to de-accelerate the process of completing our implementation plan, not to stop exercising those goals, but to make sure that we're fully engaging with the community. The motion we just passed yesterday at the Seaport Alliance meeting calls for the completion of these implementation goals by the end of the year. We were really pushing to try to maybe get it done by June. That deadline is an ambition. It's not a hard deadline. And to the degree that we can have further meaningful engagement with the surrounding communities, we're completely open to that.